Described once as an American Caesar, one former military flag officer once said of the words duty, honor, and country that those three hollowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, and what you will be. They are your rallying point, he said, to build courage when courage seems to fail, to regain faith when there seems to be little cause for faith, to create hope when hope becomes forlorn. And unhappily, neither he nor I possess that eloquence of diction, that poetry of imagination, nor that brilliance of metaphor to tell you all that they mean. But on 17 August 1955, the former Supreme Allied Commander of forces in Western Europe, who had been the commander of the Normandy invasion, a bold undertaking to end a world war and liberate the world from the despotic and tyrannical influences of the National Socialist Party of Germany under the Third Reich, by virtue of the authority vested in him as the 34th President of the United States and as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States, did by affixing his signature prescribe the code of conduct for members of the Armed Forces of the United States, which was attached to Executive Order 10631 and made a part thereof. In signing this order, the President said, "No American prisoner of war will be forgotten by the United States. Every available means will be employed by our government to establish contact with, to support, and to obtain the release of all our prisoners of war. Furthermore, the laws of the United States provide for the support and care of dependents of members of the armed forces, including those who become prisoners of war. And he assured dependents of such prisoners that these laws will continue to provide for their welfare." That code of conduct is taught to each and every enlisted service member and commissioned and warrant officer who commits to serve in the military forces of these United States and undergoes specific training designed to better equip him or her to counter and withstand all enemy efforts against him or her, and is further fully instructed as to the behavior and obligations expected of him or her during combat or captivity. And every member of the Armed Forces of the United States is expected to measure up to the standards embodied in this code of conduct while he or she is in combat or in captivity. And there is no excuse nor precautionary principle that relieves particularly a commissioned officer in the United States military forces by proclamation, ladies and gentlemen, to shirk the responsibilities or even to negligently violate the obligations under that code of conduct in the face of enemies, be they foreign or domestic, seen or unseen. But on 31 December, in the People's Republic of China, the discovery of a pneumonia of unknown etiology, later ascribed to a novel coronavirus, by 12 January, when that nation released the genetic sequence for that pathogen suspected of being the causative agent for the disease condition of COVID-19, just one day before the first report of a migration of that pathogen outside the People's Republic of China and that communist regime, with the first laboratory-confirmed case of infection being reported in the nation of Thailand on 13 January. And even after 15 January, when the first person infected with that lethal pathogen to arrive in the United States from Wuhan and Seattle, few may have anticipated that within just a month, it would be declared a public health emergency of international concern by the World Health Organization. And certainly that one might later, on March 10th, be declared a pandemic that gave root to multiple evolutions in what had heretofore been the constant assurances of historical science. Certainly not the 4,800 crew members assigned and aboard the U.S.S. Theodore Roosevelt, a Nimitz-class nuclear aircraft carrier, one of only 12 that departed from its home base in San Diego on 17 January en route to the Sino-Pacific Theater to participate in the Cobra Gold exercises in Thailand, with follow-on orders to find port in Da Nang, Vietnam, which on 23 January, just days after its departure from San Diego, confirmed its first 2 cases of COVID-19 infection. Arising not just from a solemn oath that I took decades ago and administered to many others during those passing years. While I am not a medical professional nor a licensed medical practitioner like the governor of Virginia, nor an epidemiologist like Dr. Fauci and others at the CDC and World Health Organization, I am nonetheless not convinced, perhaps just from prior experience as a biological warfare planner, who played a key role in the formation of the organization that was alleged to have alerted the president last November that the most intriguing topic for research study arising from the outbreak aboard a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier is to delve into the mysteries of how persons who by profession tend to be young and fit found a low incidence of severity from a pathogen known to be most fatal to the elderly and infirm, a fact known from the very beginning. But that was the study that was performed and which was disseminated in the news. However, as a retired intelligence professional and military officer, I am at least minimally concerned that the actions that caused the relief from command of Captain Brett CROZIER have been exploited by organizations that advocate for the championship of socialism over democracy around the world. Just as I am concerned about the single fatality aboard that vessel, the return of infections to that vessel after taking a major battle asset from our security forces in the Sino-Pacific Theater for 10 weeks offline during a critical time when the commander-in-chief was building a military presence in that region, and the recent and unexplained suicide of one of their younger crew members. I am concerned that a senior field grade officer in command of a major force projection platform unmatched by any power in that theater of military operations decided to remove that asset from the array of forces available to the commander-in-chief to respond to arising contingencies at that particular time. The People's Liberation Navy for the Chinese Communist Party have only one aircraft. For the very first time in 2014, a conventional aircraft carrier, refurbished from an incomplete aircraft carrier that was abandoned by the former Soviet Union in the 1990s, and lacking the speed and capabilities of a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. And it would truly be at least conduct unbecoming an officer to provide a battlefield advantage to an adversary of these United States during a time of increasing tensions, at a time of great loss financially and in terms of lives, sickened and lost, finding even amongst 72% of Americans strong disapproval for that communist regime that they hold responsible for the release of a pathogen that has killed over 240,000 of their fellow Americans. I am concerned as to exactly how a lethal pathogen managed to get aboard a United States warship that made only 2 ports of call from which it had escaped infection, as well as how, even with robust testing and social distancing as recommended on what should have been a safe harbor from a pathogen, nonetheless found 1,412 crew members infected and 1 fatality to a novel coronavirus, Chief Petty Officer Charles Robert Thacker Jr. Just as how I am concerned about a commanding officer who made the callous decision to seek a political solution to his problems while violating his chain of command, enabling a suspicious memorandum to provide an exclusive expose on events unfolding aboard a United States warship, a major military platform during a time of international crisis. But for those like Dr. Fauci and Northam, who have strongly advocated the theory that COVID-19 is a highly infectious disease, I have submitted a request to the Staff Judge Advocate for the United States Navy to commence an Article 32 inquiry to examine the actions of Captain Brett Crozier and the relationship of those actions to the death of one of the members of his crew, when he, without even consulting the carrier battle group, made the callous decision to relax what had been accepted as valid clinical protocols in social distancing on 29 March that led invariably to the infection and death of Chief Petty Officer Charles Robert Thacker Jr. on April 13. Leadership is not a job for which everyone can do or is capable to do. And in military leadership, there were no small commands, only small leaders. And when they make mistakes, whether commanding a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier entrusted with the lives, safety, and morale of almost 5,000 brave men and women, or a basic training company of 250 initial entry soldiers, or even just a small security detachment with less than 10 personnel assigned, when military leaders make mistakes, it is an empirical fact that there is a cost, measured not just in lives of men and women lost under their command who placed their trust and faith in you to bring them home and complete the mission, but also the family and friends that they leave behind. I am an American fighting man. I serve in the forces which guard my country and our way of life. I am prepared to give my life in their defense. I will never surrender of my own free will. If in command, I will never surrender my men while they have the means to resist. I will never forget that I am an American fighting man, responsible for my actions and dedicated to the principles which made my country free. I will trust in my God and in the United States of America. My name is Major Mike Webb, and I am running for Congress with liberty, honor, and excellence. By God, we shall make America great again. Honest. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.